Hi friends, good evening. My name is Alena Shautsova. I'm a New York immigration lawyer, and tonight we're going to have our live discussing the most interesting recent immigration news. Specifically tonight, I'm going to be talking about new standards for naturalization or citizenship that were announced by the Trump administration just last week and officially published yesterday. We're going to talk about good moral character requirement, which has always been in the law, but the new standards that were published, this specifically what changed, how this requirement is going to be considered by this administration. So if you've been following my lives or been reading my blogs, you know that I always say that in immigration law in the United States, we have hard requirements and soft requirements. Hard ones are the ones that we cannot change, established by the law, usually by Congress, and spelled out. For example, you have to file Form N-400 no matter what if you would like to qualify for naturalization. Right? You must do that. However, the form and the questions in the form may change. Or, for example, something like qualifications for asylum. You must establish that you are a refugee under the law to qualify for it. But then we have what I call soft requirement. And again, it's not any legal definition. I call it this way. This is something that is more flexible. This is something that is discretionary. And this is something that each administration shapes the way they see it. So time came, and this administration is trying to change those soft requirements, right? They try to make it, generally speaking, harder to qualify for this or that benefit, depending on what we're talking about. And today we're talking about citizenship, how to become a citizen, and what now this administration is going to be looking for when they approve your N-400 form. They just changed it, and we would like to know why. Why it's important? Because if you're planning on filing for naturalization, you need to know about this. If you are planning on ever becoming a citizen, you need to know about this, not necessarily in the nearest future, right? And if your application is pending, you also need to know about this. So thank you very much for joining, and let's start. So as I mentioned before, good moral character has always been a requirement, one of the qualification things that you must establish when you file for US citizenship. And typically, what was checked before was just a lack of criminal convictions or arrests within the statutory period. What is a statutory period? This is a time frame that is required for you to spend in a green card holder status prior to filing for naturalization. And for example, for those who are married to US citizens, typically it will be 3 years. And for those who are not, it will be 5 years. But there are some variations. Sometimes it's shorter, again, depending on the qualifications. So within this statutory period, you have to show that you are a person who did not commit any crimes. But this administration is trying to set the standard higher, okay? So what do? They're saying that now, unlike previous administrations, they will be looking beyond just lack of criminal behavior. They will start checking the following. According to this memo, they say that they're going to be looking at sustained community involvement and contributions to the United States. What have you been doing with yourself in the United States? Have you been involved with volunteering? Are you a religious person, for example? Do you give donations in your communities? What projects you've been working on, if any, right? Family caregiving responsibilities and ties in the United States. What exactly are they talking about? Well, I can only guess, but guess what? If you are a person who has been found to be or charged with domestic violence, somebody who did not pay their child support, failed to support their children, have community complaints about your behavior, you will not become a US citizen. Educational attainment. Are you trying to study and advance your education or not? Stable and lawful employment. Now they will be looking at how you're filing and paying your taxes beyond simple paperwork, but are you doing it correctly and legally? Length of lawful residence in the United States. This is an interesting requirement because we all know you have to spend specific amount of time to qualify for the citizenship first, and compliance with tax obligations and financial responsibilities in the United States. Tax obligations, we understand. What is financial responsibilities? I guess this is how you're paying your bills. If you have judgments against you, how you respect the services and work of others. If you're somebody who decides to not to pay your bills and wait for this enforcement and judgments against you, if a service provider has to sue you to get paid for the services they provided to you, I guess it means under these standards, you may not receive citizenship. Your application may not be approved. But let's go deeper. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the situation. So as you see, now your whole character is going to be evaluated, right? Not only whether or not you complied with the minimum, they're going to look beyond this minimum and see if you are a person deserving US citizenship. Very interesting, I have to tell you. This is a new approach. It's something that emerged just this past week and will be applied to pending applications. So if you have civil lawsuits for non-payments and judgments, if you've been known in the community as somebody who's been harassing people or involved in aggressive solicitation, you better go to that interview with your attorney. Why? Because this is exactly what we're going to talk about next. So basically what this new memo says is that the offices now are going to have wide discretion. They will be really asking you questions if they find some information contrary to your story, for example. They will be asking you questions to explain yourself as to what's going on, and they will expect evidence from you proving that you still deserve citizenship if there is any negative information about you online, in a background check, things like that. In fact, the memo says that you will have to produce reliable, credible evidence, references from community leaders, religious organizations, employment. They will want to see that you not just have a payment plan for your taxes due, but that you paid the taxes in full. They would want to see that if you had any criminal charges and fines, you paid them in full, that you completely rehabilitated prior to granting you that citizenship. And again, they're going to look at things like your behavior in a community, and they phrase it very, very interestingly. If you look at the memo itself, they say they're going to be looking at when they're trying to assess your behavior and acts, they're going to look at the circumstances of what was happening with you and your actions, your participation in various situations, and they will look for clues to bar you from getting citizenship, either permanently or on a conditional basis, meaning that if you rehabilitate yourself and if a statutory period passes, only then you will receive citizenship. So they're saying that if you're not guilty per se of any criminal acts, but they find that you committed unlawful acts or if they find that your actions are contrary to the standards of behavior of citizens in the jurisdiction where you're at, where you reside, you will not get citizenship. That's a very interesting, very vague definition. They come to very vague definitions, and it's dangerous. Why? Because when we see vague standards, we can expect that those standards will be applied differently at different places, right? Here, I think it's worth it to mention this unlawful acts and what the government talks about when they say that if you're guilty of unlawful acts, you're not going to get citizenship. These are the things like bail jumping, meaning that you got the bail and you didn't comply with the conditions. Bank fraud, maybe, perhaps. Apart from a conviction of bank fraud, they also mean issues of bad checks and things like that. Forgery, altering insurance fraud, obstructing of justice, social security fraud, unlawful harassment, right? If somebody call cops on you, that's why I say do not argue with your neighbors. Neighbors usually is the first source of various community complaints. Violating a U.S. embargo, that's an interesting one. This is when you go to Cuba, for example, or if you're a company, if you own a company, you're violating various sanctions and restrictions. Unlawful voting, unlawful registry, unlawful registering for voting, unlawful harassment, and of course, false claim of U.S. citizenship. Certain of these enumerated acts can be also crimes sometimes, but not always, okay? And if they say if they didn't rise to the levels of crimes, they still may be considered against you when you're filing for citizenship. But how will they know about that, right? If there were no formal charges, well, they're going to do their background checks, social media checks, of course, open sources, and deeper background checks to find out what's going on. But do you know what the primary source of the information is in these situations when something was done but did not result in criminal charges? These are letters by what I call kind people, your neighbors, co-workers, friends sometimes, who are informing the US government of what is it that you did wrong. And if they check and they find out that this is the truth, what those kind people are saying about you, you may lose your chance at receiving citizenship in the United States according to these guidelines. Very, very important to understand that, right? And of course, that not always it is the case that the criminal conviction is going to prevent you from becoming a US citizen forever. It's absolutely not the case. First of all, we have petty offense exceptions. Second, of course, we have what we call statutory period, situations when you wait for enough time to pass. But also something very important you need to know is this: whenever you have a criminal conviction in your record, you have to check with an attorney, because certain criminal convictions make you deportable. And if this is the case, if you file for citizenship and they find out that you are deportable, removable, instead of getting the citizenship, you will be placed in removal proceedings. All right. So when we talk about criminal convictions here in a frame of citizenship, we talk only about criminal convictions that do not make you deportable. Why? Because if they are making you deportable, do not file for citizenship at all, right? You're going to basically signing yourself off to the way on your way to deportation proceedings to immigration court. So this is very important to understand. To sum up, the government is going to look at everything that you're doing in the United States beyond just your you being a green card holder, maintaining your residence in the United States, and not being involved in criminal acts. By the way, if you have 2 or more DUIs within statutory period, that potentially will disqualify you from getting citizenship in the United States. That actually not a new requirement, and also something very interesting, something that people forget about or prefer not to know about. Why? Because it hasn't been used in many, many years. But if you are involved in adultery, if your actions cause someone else's marriage to break, you will not get citizenship in the United States. And I think this administration is going to somehow revive this very old rule. So now you know it's going to be harder to get citizenship. You have to show that you're an incredibly likable person. If you have any judgments, lawsuits, quarrels, um, restraining orders involved in any controversies in your community, you will have to present evidence of rehabilitation and explanations as to what's going on for your N400 application to be granted. And now, guys, if you have questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. And of course, the topic of good moral character is a huge topic. It has a lot of parts to it. Again, unlawful acts, criminal acts, petty offense exceptions, catch-all provisions where you basically can be denied citizenship just because, right? But let's see if you guys have questions, and I'll be very happy to answer them. All right. Guys, for those of you who speak Russian, I do have Russian channels and Russian streams, but this is not one of them. All right. Let's see. What's the change in green card application? I'm not aware of any specific changes in green card applications, apart from green card application in court became very expensive because you will have to pay additional fee. And of course, the background checks are more rigid, and your qualifications for green cards better be solid as a rock, all right? Otherwise, it will not be approved. All right. Okay, let's see. Good morning. Hi, Riza from Singapore. Let's see. How are you, Mohammed? Hi, Christine. Am I going to be denied? I do have payment plans and I cannot pay in full. Christine, according to the new guidelines, that's what they say. They say that they want to see you, your taxes paid in full. It's always been the case, and that you could have had the payment plan. As long as you show the payment plan, you would be okay. Now, if you filed your application and it's pending, right? I guess you boxed into the situation. You have no choice but to appear for the interview. So in this situation, I would probably prepare documents explaining as to what happened and why you ended up owing taxes. And that's the best that you can do, right? And show your compliance with the payment plan that you have. What is the balance, right? What's your income? I would just document the situation very well and show maybe that it was not a result of any malicious actions, and you just perhaps made a mistake, maybe your accountant made a mistake, whatever happened, right? But I would be very well prepared to explain the situation if you already filed your application before these new guidelines were published, right? Let's see if we have more questions. Thank you guys very much for your gifts and for sharing. Hi, I-751 petition. Important request documents, please, and how long it takes. So when you file your I-751 petition to remove conditions from your residency, if it is based on marriage, because it also can be based on investment, EB5 filers, beneficiaries, they also have to remove conditions from the green cards. But I assume you're talking about the right, it is 751, it's marriage-based situation, unless you're a child or dependent, but nevertheless, important documents usually include documents proving real marriage, right? Showing that you resided together with your spouse within the past 2 years or the time prior to filing. If you are filing jointly, if you're filing separately, you will have to show that usually you have to show that you had a real marriage. There are some debates, but typically that you had a real marriage and it either resulted in divorce or you were abused in marriage, or that within 2 years that you've been a green card holder, some circumstances occurred due to which now, if you're removed, you will suffer extreme hardship. All right. So it's a big topic. Removal of the conditions on the green card. Always, usually, they demand to prove that the marriage was real first. Very interesting. Why? Because it's not technically the requirement for the third waiver-based request, that hardship request, hardship that occurred within the 2 years of you being a conditional resident. However, the courts typically still will demand that you show that your marriage was real. Why it's important? Well, it's important because for some particular reason, in a waiver-based cases, many times people struggle showing that the marriage was real because it was short. A waiver-based I-751 can be filed at any time prior to 2-year anniversary of your green card or after. Sometimes people are going to file that I-751 petition to remove conditions on the green card 10 years after they got married and received their first green card. Why? Again, because the law allows that. There is like a loophole in the law, I would say. But they struggle proving that the marriage was real. And that's the biggest challenge. So when you guys get married to a US citizen, a green card holder, make sure that you collect and keep collecting evidence of real marriage. Always, until you become a US citizen. Okay? Just keep that in mind. And of course, you can find more information about that on my website, shautsova.com. All right, if that's your topic, you have to file, you filed, you're waiting for it, things like that. All right. Hi, Donovan. Is any program to travel internationally while you have a 10-year green card, no bad record? Is there any problem? No, you shouldn't have any problems typically traveling internationally, guys. If you don't have any criminal convictions or charges, you obtained your green card lawfully. All right? Let me take some questions from Facebook, because today I have all these different devices I have to check during the live. Hi, guys. Hi, Said. Hi, Sam. Hi, Makbul. Hi, Kazi. Hi, Safaran. Hi, Sam. Let's see. If you guys have questions, let me know. All right. Thank you. All right, we have tons of questions. Let me see questions from Facebook and YouTube. Here's the YouTube questions. Hi, Rob. I received the $50 speed camera ticket after N400 interview. Should I answer yes to question 4 and 41445? If so, will this delay to issue the naturalization certificate? I do not know what the question says. My memory is pretty good, but not that good. Okay, so let me know what it says, then I'll be able to help you. But you have to be very accurate in your answers. Until today, and I think beyond today, or yesterday rather, A $50 speed camera ticket, if it was the only ticket that you got, would not cause any issues, okay? Won't cause any issues. They did say that if you were cited for something like reckless driving, something more serious, then it may prevent you from getting a citizenship. But $50 speed camera ticket, it shouldn't be a problem at all. I understand that you probably did not slow down in some area and then receive this thing by mail, right? Like lots of us do. I don't think it's going to be any issue unless, of course, sometimes I've seen a case where a person received like 47 of such things, right? And they were behind on paying them. Then it may present an issue because then it rises to the level of reckless disregard of the community standards, blah, 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 things like that. $50 single ticket shouldn't deprive you of ability to get citizenship. Okay. Hi, Andrea. Do you have any idea why TPS approvals for El Salvador are taking so long? Our automatic extension will expire soon. I can only guess, but all I can tell you is that approvals for all TPS countries are taking very long. Why? Well, I'm not really sure, but it may be connected with the changed law that now says that if you have TPS pending only, it does not prevent the government from deporting you. So pending TPS is no longer viewed as something that's going to stop deportation or removal proceedings against you. The case is not going to be administratively closed. And perhaps in certain situations, the government would like to use that to remove certain people out of the United States. That's my only guess. Am I correct? I don't know. There were no official announcements saying that they will be slowing down, but this is just something that happened. Okay. Hi, Frank. USCIS sent me a letter dismissing my asylum that I was issued an I-860 by DHS, which I didn't receive, and need to go to ICE for credible fear interview. I'm scared to go along. Any help? Frank, I have to tell you, you're not the only person who received such a letter. Many people these days started receiving the same letters. I understand this is what happened. You entered the United States at the time of the pandemic. You were supposed to be processed properly by the government issuing against you expedited order of removal, giving you credible fear interview, canceling that, and placing you in regular 240 proceedings. But for whatever magical reason at that time, CBP did not do it. They just didn't do it. What they would do, they would give you parole and place you in, and would not place you in removal proceedings, right? You would be released on your own recognizance or issued parole, and you would file your asylum claim with the asylum office. Now they started catching up on the problem, and they started dismissing those asylum cases, saying, go to ICE and request credible fear interview, and after that, maybe you're going to have a chance of getting asylum. That's what happened. And it's scary to go to ICE. I understand that because they may detain you now as well. Well, it's a tough situation, but you need to understand, as an attorney, I can only tell you what you need to do within the lawful frames. And basically, if you would like to pursue that asylum claim, you have no choice but to ask ICE for that credible fear interview and take a lawyer with you. But you need to know that if ICE would like to arrest you at that point because of that magical I-860 that you've never seen, they will be able to do that. The good thing is that if you pass the credible fear, they may release you too. Okay? Will everybody be arrested? I don't think so. In fact, some lawyers reported that clients did just that. They appeared for those interviews and they were absolutely fine. But I do not know what moves ICE officers and CBP officers and why some people get detained when they really shouldn't be. Okay. Hi, Kids Hunt. My brother is 15 and just got his green card. Does he automatically get his citizenship or does he need to apply for it? US citizen mom. Well, there are rules about automatic citizenship for children if they are residing in physical and legal custody of their parent who is a US citizen and they're under 18. He's most likely, a green card, citizen by law. What I would recommend here, however, if this is the case, is first of all to verify that, and second, to file for certificate of naturalization. It's different from N400, it's N600 form, and trust me, it's better if he files for it and has proof that he is a citizen than simply filing for the US passport, right? Hi, Wise Haupt. Some of your comments I can read out loud. Some of them I cannot. Okay. That's somebody who is always connects to my YouTube streams. If you don't want to pay taxes and live in the United States, listen, of course, people who would like to become US citizens, they have to participate, right? Taxes, pay for our roads, for our safety, for our military, for schools, absolutely. Also, however, sometimes people do not have to pay taxes because they didn't make enough income, maybe for whatever reasons, they were not regarded as public charge either under the law. So not necessarily if you didn't file taxes, you will be found guilty of some unlawful behavior. All right, but absolutely, if you made income, you have to report it properly, right? And you have to at least provide it, you have to have a chance of correcting that. That's what I think, right? If the government finds that you didn't do what you were supposed to do, but you can and you're willing to do the right thing, you should be given a chance to do the right thing, all right? Hi, Rob, the 50 speed ticket camera, should I mention about it in a ceremony? I would mention it. Some of my clients, when they have like a little thing like that, I advise them, listen, it's better to disclose it to avoid any possible issues in the future, because I think it's not going to have any effect on your citizenship. It's just a small thing. I bet you people who are sitting at the desk collecting these little forms, because what's going to happen when you come to your oath ceremony, there will be a desk with a couple of ladies who will be collecting these little questionnaires, right, and quickly checking them and taking your green cards from you guys. And I think they'll tell you that it's not a problem. But consult with your lawyer, whoever helped you, just to make sure. Show them that paper from the speeding ticket. But I'm like 99.9% sure it's too small to present any problems for you. Okay. Hi, Maria. Got my green card by 42B after 16 years here. Wait. Finally went back to my home country. Hi, Marat. I'm so sorry. I miss Maria. Finally got back to my home country last month and came back with no problems. Just a couple questions at the border. Absolutely. Most people not going to have any problems, right? If they received their green card lawfully, they did not violate any laws, didn't have any problems with criminal arrests, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. All right, let's see the TikTok questions. Hi, Little US. Affirmative asylum pending with USCIS since 2017. Is it required to pay 100 yearly? How and where? Guys, USCIS published a notice about that. They said that if you will be required, right, to pay that fee, they will let you know. So first of all, you don't need to be stressed out about paying this fee. they will let you know. They stated that people who filed applications after October 1st, 2024, I believe, will be required to pay this fee. And there will be like an online system how to do that. All right. But they stated no need to do anything. If you are required to pay the fee, they will let you know. Hi, Alicia. I have German passport. How to live and work legally in the United States? Just like everybody else, you'll have to be sponsored for a green card either by a family member or by an employer. Thank you guys very much for stars on Facebook. By an employer, but the process usually takes a long time unless you're marrying a US citizen. Thank you, Jimmy, for the stars. Thank you guys for being so kind and generous. The topic we're discussing at the beginning concerned new standards for citizenship. The government basically stated that they're going to look beyond simple questions on the forms. They will be looking at who you are, what you're doing, if you're presenting any issues for your community or to the country, you're contributing to your communities, if you're taking care of your family members, if you have now restraining orders or had in the past, there was a domestic violence situation, they're not going to approve your application unless you're going to show that you rehabilitated, right? Hi, Carlson. I already applied for citizenship and my green card is 4 years and USCIS call me. Okay, they called you. Where is the rest of the question? It disappeared. Sorry. It just disappeared. All right, if I find it, I'm going to answer it, okay? Hi, Galinda. My nephew is in detention center. How he can come out from there? All right, Govinda, so your nephew, your family member is in detention center and you would like to know if he can be released. Well, we need to know why he's in detention center, how and when he entered the United States, and if he potentially can qualify for anything. If he got arrested after committing a crime that qualifies as a crime under Lincoln Raleigh Act, aggravated felony, subject to mandatory detention, he's not getting out, okay? If he tried to cross the border and subject to expedited removal and credible fear interview, he's not getting out. They're not going to give him bond. In certain situations, people may qualify for immigration bond. But these days, there are less and less those situations. The government is trying to make it very hard for people who are in detention to get out of the detention. You just need to know about that. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Usually it means that the person will have to win their asylum claim, withholding or removal claim, or relief under Convention Against Torture, right? Typically, not always, but typically. And I don't know what's happening in your nephew's situation. If you need a consultation, please call my office, 917-885-2261, and my secretaries will try to accommodate you, even for the urgent request. But detention cases nowadays are very difficult to work with because we have very limited opportunity to help the person to get out of the detention. And typically families and people getting very upset about that, okay? All right, how long does it take time? I thank you very much, guys, for the gifts. How long time does it take for USCIS? I guess for I-45 to be granted after correspondence was received and USCIS is reviewing it. There is no time frame. USCIS may take as long as they need to make a decision, typically 90 days, but it can be any anytime. Hi, Fly with Sammy. Thank you very much for your gift. Thank you guys for being so nice. Thank you for sharing and liking the stream. Let's see if you guys have more questions. Hi, Digital Dreamscape. What if someone filed before August 15th? Does the new memo apply to those applicants? From what I understood from the memo, it does. Because the memo stated, from now on, because I was looking for it. I was looking for this information to see. But all it's said in the memo about the timing, it says from now on. So I think it will apply for pending cases, right? That's the new reality. Sometimes it's, we have changes on the go. You have to be ready for them. Could we predict that this would happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because as I said, there are requirements in the law that are flexible, discretionary. Each administration is shaping them the way they see them. The next one probably will be extreme hardship. Why? Because nobody really knows what extreme hardship is. There are some cases about that. Here and there is a memo, but what is extreme hardship? But we need extreme hardships to establish various waiver qualifications, right? Another one may be, let me think. Well, good moral character is already being reshaped, right? Public charge. Last time they tried to go after public charge. Biden's administration codified it. They stated, they passed the regulations explaining what public charge is. But I've noticed at adjustment of status interviews, officers are asking in-depth questions about your assets and liabilities to make sure you accurately answered questions related to public charge. And they actually can tell you that, well, the government doesn't want to have somebody in the United States who is not working. This is the tour, not related to our topic, but you guys, you need to know that if you're filing for a green card based on marriage, or it is your US citizen child who's 21, is sponsoring you, you are an immediate relative. And the fact that you worked without authorization in the United States is forgiven to you. There is no need in lying and concealing the employment. In fact, it will hurt you because you will not be able to show that you can make money, and the officer may doubt that you will not become a public charge, even if you have a joint sponsor or you have your sponsor makes enough money. That's just the reality. Just know about that. If you work here lawfully or unlawfully, you still have to file taxes. The judges in courts who are dealing with cancellation or removal and sometimes asylum cases are instructing respondents, people who are trying to get status on the issue, saying that they're expecting you to file taxes, even if you did not have or do not have Social Security. How? They're saying that you can obtain tax ID and pay taxes, file taxes and pay if it's appropriate, or you can file taxes through a company that you're going to register. Okay? You need to know about this. This is a very important issue that now is being vetted again and again. Oh, I got more stars. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you guys for the stars. Guys, this is not a dating life. Somebody asking me if I'm married and things like that. I'm answering immigration questions. And you can calculate my age. I'm old. I'm going to tell you right now, okay? By looking at when I graduated on my website. So that's going to give me more visitors to my website, Shautsova.com. All right? And I am married and I have 2 kids. If somebody would like to know. Hi, Jacob. Please, lawyer. America is not stud bound. How can you help me to come there? How can I help you to come here? Hey, listen, sometimes I do help. For example, if you are a talented person and you can qualify for EB1, I can help you with Petition I-140. If you have master's degree and higher and you have good work experience, I can help you with EB2 national interest waiver, for example. If you have a family member who would like to sponsor you, I can help you with that as well. Or investment route, I can help you. But there is no longer route where somebody who doesn't have any of these attributes may just come to the United States like it was during the Biden administration, where pretty much anyone could come using CBP1. This is no longer the case, okay? That's what's going on. All right, let me see if you guys have more questions. If someone is working in another state and her case is pending, what will happen? If your case is pending in immigration court and you're working in another state, you can work in another state, that's not a problem, but you have to live, you have to reside in jurisdiction where your case is pending. And you have to update your address with the government promptly. It's very, very important, okay? All right, hi, yes, sir. What is the restrictions for DV lottery winners and how long does it take to process the DS-260? Restrictions on DV lottery winners, you have to be admissible. You have to show that you complied with the DV lottery requirements at the time when you were filing for it, not later, but at the time when you were filing for it, right? You have to have a valid passport. You should not be lying about your family status. I see for some reason, and I do not know why, all the time, people who stated, we were selected in DV lottery, but we have a problem. We did not declare all our children when we submitted the intake. I'm like, why? I don't understand why. Why would you not declare all of your children? But later it becomes a big issue because when the government sees that you lied to them, they do not want to and they will not issue that visa. All right, so this is very, very important to understand. And of course, you have to be admissible. All right, you have to be admissible. All right. Let's see. Hi, Digital Dreamscape. I know it's always challenging for naturalization, but is it usually harder for applicants who got their green cards from marriage, now divorced, and filing under this general provision rule? No, I wouldn't say that it's harder. Absolutely not. But the government will check still if your marriage was real. Well, how do they do that? They're going to ask you questions. Usually they start with your address history and they compare that address history with the address history you left on previous filings, right? And then they look at your documents, your tax filings and stuff. And of course, as I said, don't forget about kind people who write to the government on your behalf, informing them of various developments in your life, who you're living with, what you're eating for dinner, and what comments in line you are leaving. So I'm talking about anonymous letters that they do take into consideration, even they say that they don't, right? Because they may trigger, those letters may trigger, investigations and stuff like that. But if you had a real marriage, you have nothing to worry about, okay? If you guys live together, what do you have to get stuck in unhappy marriage just to get citizenship? Of course not. Of course not. If everything was done lawfully, you have nothing to worry about, okay? All right. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining today. Let me answer maybe one more question, or we're starting these questions they like come at once. I don't know why. It's like very weird. All right. What if someone got green card through marriage, but have 2 kids with a different woman out of marriage? What happened? I know what happened, obviously, right? I do not know. Listen, it's not per se disqualifier. But what happens here is that they're looking at whether marriage through which you got the green card was real or not. It's not a good thing that happened, that you have children with someone else, not 1, but 2. I guess they're going to be looking at the timing of those kids, right? And things like that. It may be relevant only with regard to whether or not that marriage was real. So timing of disclosure about those kids is very important, I think. All right. You definitely should work with an attorney. There are various situations in life, sometimes they happen. I wouldn't say that per se it means that the marriage with the person who helped you to get a green card was done only to get the green card, right? Something went sideways in that marriage, I think. It seems this way. Also, question, who are those kids live with? With the other mom, or did you guys take them? I don't know. Right? He never disclosed the kids? Oh, that's a spin on the story. This situation gets more interesting. Was the person ever listed on the birth certificate for those children? And they live with their moms, so there were 2 different moms? Okay. So the father was with 3 different women at least, right? All right, let me ask you this. The wife, the US citizen wife, did she know about that? Hey, some people live in open marriage and they kind of don't care. That's the agreement. Interestingly enough, per se, it's not unlawful. However, if you start calling all those women your wives, it becomes a polygamy, and that's illegal in the United States. So I really tell you that it is a messy situation, right? I do not know how all these women were able to address all of that. Will an officer say that the guy in this situation lacks good moral character? I do not know. I find it is very interesting that if I file a VAWA case and a male says that he's been cheated on, the case gets approved in 99% of times. But if a girl says that she's being cheated on, case is not necessarily as approved. So my take on that, it's going to depend on who is considering your case. If you can show that you've been a good, true, but unfaithful husband, you did support those other children, and somehow your wife did not divorce you. I don't know how, but somehow don't divorce you, right? And didn't withdraw her affidavit of support when you guys went through green card application, guess you may still have a chance. But they will be looking at the evidence of whether or not you were supporting the kids. Now, if you did not disclose, or that person, not necessarily you, I don't know who's asking about this, did not disclose the children, I think that may be regarded as fraud. Why? Because I can imagine the USCIS officer would want to know if someone involved in immigration process based on marriage had extramarital affairs, because it may affect the approval of the case and qualifications for the case. So the lying, that's the problem. Kids by themselves, of course, never is a problem, right? The lying may be a problem, not disclosing the information. I'll be honest, I would have to think about a case like this to see if there is any chance to know all the facts, to look at the forms, to look at the timing, to look at the kids' birth certificates, right? Talk to everybody involved to see what was going on, right? And why it was happening. So it's definitely an interesting, messy situation. But I think ultimately USCIS is going to look at truthfulness of the actions and whether the marriage was real or not. The marriage does not have to be perfect. You have to know this, all right? Marriage does not have to be perfect. You don't have to be forever in love. You don't have to be even sometimes living under the same roof, even though it's, they check with why you don't live together. You don't have to have intimacy sometimes. There were cases where older people would marry each other and they say that they don't have this part of their life active, and the cases were proved. So, each case is different. But if you lie, that's the problem. Okay? So if I were this person, I would have never concealed the fact that I had kids. And then I would deal with everything else. Right? Oh, hi, the chosen one. Is the memo is in effect immediately? I believe so. Because as I stated, they said from now on in the memo. So I guess it's effect immediately. If I will ever encounter information to the contrary, I'm gonna let you guys know. All right. Thank you guys very much for your gifts. Thank you for your generosity, for stars, for those who were sending them on Facebook, and for nice comments on YouTube. And of course, nice comments, sharing, and hearts on TikTok. Guys, don't forget to sign up for my social media, so we're going to meet again. I will share with you all that I know about this memo. If we're going to get more details, if there is any chance that this memo is not immediate, I will let you know, but I understood it to be applicable from the 18th when it was published, right? It was announced on Friday, but was published on the 18th, which is yesterday. Have a very fun night reading the memo, I guess, and watching other immigration news. And I hope to see you guys soon.